Sound rolling.
Camera 1.
Rolling.
Camera 2. Rolling.
My name is Justin Wolfe, and I'm an associate professor of history at Tulane University. I was for a while the William Arsenault Professor of Latin American History. My research focuses primarily on Central America, but larger questions of nation-state formation, identity formation, and the larger African diaspora. And I specialize probably more than anywhere else in Nicaragua, where I've worked for probably 30 years. But in terms of teaching, I teach much more widely. I teach U.S.-Latin American relations, I teach cultural history, I teach independence movements, I teach our bread and butter modern Latin American history class, and I also teach more specialized seminars in peasant movements, in Latin American modernity. More recently, I've also started teaching a class in documentary filmmaking and history, where students work to develop historical analysis, but the final product is actually a short documentary that they produce, thinking about the relationship between visual representation and historical knowledge. So I arrived at Tulane in about, I guess the year 2000, so almost 23 years ago at the end of this year. And this was the place to be a Central American historian. The Dean of Central American History, Lee Woodward, was here. He had retired and this position opened up. And in a lot of ways it was serendipity, because I could be a Central Americanist without apology. You know, I didn't have to pretend I was a Mexicanist or an Argentinianist or something like that. The Stone Center has been a really important part of my career all along. I think, you know, one of the ways that it's been the most important and isn't necessarily as obvious is really the large community of Latin Americanists. I was an undergraduate Latin American Studies major. I participated in the Latin American Studies programs when I was in graduate school. But when I arrived here, there was just this deep, rich community, and not just community, but community of people who were interested in stepping beyond the limits of their own disciplinary focus. So I think that was one of the most important parts, but then also just being at an institution with just phenomenal resources. The Latin American Library is just a fantastic resource. The Central American collection in particular is really without parallel. And then finally working with students, really top flight students that were competitive with programs all over the country who wanted to come to study Central America, to study Latin America, to make use of this kind of grand set of resources. And I think that was, all of that together really marked Latin American Studies at Tulane as different. There have been a number of really standout experiences during my time at Tulane with staff, with students, with other faculty. Picking just one could be really hard, but I will say that I've always really loved the kind of graduate conferences that the LAGO students have put on, the Latin American Studies grad students, for their really willingness to kind of to dig deep and to build what had been a very small and not very well attended conference at the beginning into something with a reputation that brought grad students from really across the country. And so to see that kind of, that community that the grad students put together to make that happen, and the ways in which they were trying to connect to faculty and to students elsewhere, it made me think that this is what an academic center is supposed to be doing. It's hard for me to find one word that I think describes the legacy of the Stone Center. I don't think any word quite can sum up that legacy and what it means for the future. But if I had to pick at least a short phrase to describe that legacy, it would be perhaps promoting a constant revision.